and Gio.
BT and Sal.
Kevin and Tiki.
Keith McPherson, your nighttime host on The Fan.
On the fan.
On the fan.
On the fan.
It's WFAN Daily, hosted by Pete Hoffman.
Welcome to another episode of WFAN Daily with yours truly, Pete Hoffman, and the New York Jets. There's a report coming out from Ian Rappaport that they have been in contract talks with their two young stars, Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson. And let me just clap a little bit because Garrett Wilson deserves every ounce of money he can get from the Jets, because for the past 3 years, he's had to deal with the worst quarterback situation in the NFL. And remember, there was a Cleveland Browns team that had Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco, and a bunch of other players, going back and forth. But no, the Jets with Zach Wilson, with Aaron Rodgers for 2 years, with Mike White, the quarterback situation was quarterback hell in Florham Park. It just was. And Garrett Wilson has proven now, 3 years in a row, putting up over 1,000 yards. His targets went down last year, and yet his receptions went up. His yards overall went up. He is one of the best in the league, and if they can figure out that quarterback situation, they can figure out the offense situation, that he is going to continue to climb and be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. So you lock up Garrett Wilson, no questions asked. That, to me, is totally smart. What he's been through, that he's never wavered. He said he's always wanted to be here. At one point in time, when you brought in Davante Adams, I was in question, and it seemed like there was a question of, are the Jets going to stay with Davante Adams or Garrett Wilson? And that was a no-brainer. It was should have always been Garrett Wilson. That was like a no doubt. And then you've also got Sauce Gardner. And to me, my biggest issue is he regressed so much last year, whether it was because the team was suffering, whether it was because he just isn't as good as we thought he was. There was a lot of regression with Sauce Gardner. He was getting, kind of holding up for hits, not making hits, kind of, the lack of interceptions. There was a lot with Sauce Gardner that we've been expecting, and it just hasn't been there. And last year was the icing on the cake. So the fact that now, again, Garrett Wilson, smart move, lock him up. That's fantastic. Show these guys that if they perform well, if they do their job, they'll be a major factor, and they'll get their payday. But Sauce Gardner, to me, such a big hit. Now, Aaron Glenn clearly is a coach, defensive-minded coach. He's been there before. Maybe he's made a connection with Sauce Gardner before, but maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's why they brought in Aaron Glenn, because he's somebody that can get the best out of Gardner. But I'll tell you this much. I wouldn't put the risk on it this year. I'd wait. I'd wait for that contract extension. I'd wait for midway through the year. I'd wait for even after the year to make that contract extension or contract offer, because prove to me that you were committed. Yeah, I know there was a nice OTA. That was beautiful. You showed up. That's great. But you got to do more. You got to show it on the field. You got to show me that you're the type of player that if this team does get down, whether it's points, whether it's an injury, whatever the case is, that you're still going to put the best out on the field, that you're going to be a leader on the field. And if they're going to pay you like a leader, you got to be able to act that way. You got to be able to put up numbers like a leader, like a true star, like a true all-pro player. And I don't think he's committed. And Aaron Glenn, this is a first move if you're going to sign these two guys. And again, Garrett Wilson, again, everything he's done has been the right way. He has held himself up high. He's put all the effort out there with some of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Zach Wilson, and I'm not going to say that Aaron Rodgers is the worst quarterback in the NFL last year, but let's be honest with you, he wasn't a star-studded quarterback. He wasn't who they brought him in there to be. And he still improved. Sauce Gardner regressed, and a lot of that is mental. A lot of that is saying, hey, dude, do I really want to hit this guy? Do I want to lay my body out on the line when this team's going to lose anyway? Well, I got to be honest. The Jets are not going to have this amazing season that they're going to have this amazing run to the playoffs and win the Super Bowl. It's not happening. So you're going to have a lot of ups and downs. Is Sauce Gardner going to be able to deliver on his promise? If you're going to pay him like a big boy, then he's got to deliver like a big boy. I'm hesitant of that. I am hesitant to allow Sauce Gardner to be committed before he's done anything for Aaron Glenn. Now, listen, again, prior regime, Robert Saleh, he's supposed to be Robert Saleh is supposed to be a very good defensive coach, right? He was supposed to be somebody to get the best out of his players, and he lost that with Gardner. Is Aaron Glenn going to get the best out of Sauce Gardner? So that, to me, is confusing if they want to go there. I know why they want to pay the young players. They're young, they're 24. It makes sense. You want to keep them around. But I just don't think that Sauce Gardner is going to be able to live up to what his expectations were, and you're just going to throw away money, throw away a commitment to somebody who's not going to deliver on their promise, unlike Garrett Wilson. So you're going to get one out of two. Garrett Wilson, smart move. Sauce Gardner, bad move. Hopefully it doesn't kill them too much with the salary cap. Now, as far as the games from last night, from depending on when you're listening to this, today, last night, Mets with a good win. Kodai Senga, unfortunately, goes down at 5 2/3 after another, Pete Alonso mishap at first base. Even though Kodai Senga said he was feeling it in his hamstring before he had to go and make that catch and jump up for that ball. He's going to be put on the IL. Who knows how long he's going to be on the IL? Is it a huge concern? No, because you got Sean Manaea and you got Frankie Montas that are making their way back. Maybe they're going to have to rush Frankie Montas back a little bit sooner. Do they have to rush anybody back? They have Paul Blackburn that they've been using, as a long relief guy. Now he can go back into the in the starting rotation. You still got McGill hanging around. You still got Peterson pitching 9 innings. Everything is kind of, even though it's not perfect, they're still finding a way to mix and match the pieces and make it all work and keep on winning games, which is the most important thing. Juan Soto is just completely on fire. In the past, I think it's 12 games, he's got 5 home runs. He's batting like 382, 388 or whatever it is. And he has now, in the past 6 games, 11 hits, walked 5 or 6 times. So on base about 16, 17 times in the last 6 games alone. He is finally on fire, and he's finally showing Mets fans why we were so excited to get him. It was never a doubt if Juan Soto was going to deliver the goods, was going to be who he was going to be in every other area, whether he was with the Nationals, whether with the Padres, whether with the Yankees. You always knew Juan Soto was going to show up. It just was when. It wasn't a concern of, it's never going to happen. It just was, how long do we have to wait to see this Juan Soto? And maybe it's, Brandon Nimmo was talking about it, and it may sound stupid, but Brandon Nimmo was talking about the humidity and the heat and just how the ball carries in Citi Field. And he was telling everybody, just get ready. And maybe it's happening. Maybe it's finally here. And Juan Soto is just able to hit in this ballpark a little bit better because of the change in the weather. Who knows? Who cares? They keep on winning. They're 21 games over 500, and they just keep on rolling. This is 6 games in a row, 15 out of the last 18 games. They've won 15-3 in the last 18 games. I mean, the Mets are doing everything right. Everyone's coming up in big spots. It doesn't make a difference who it is, too. It's like, remember Tyron Taylor on Wednesday's game after a tight play at home plate, but in the Peterson game, they were able to throw out a runner, get out a ton of situations. Everyone just kind of stepping up, whether it's defensive plays, whether it's offensive plays, whether it's pitching performances. It just seems like somebody else is stepping up at a big spot, except for Ryan Stanek, who almost blew the game on Thursday. But Edwin Diaz came in and it closed out his 15th game of the season. And again, it's just all coming up New York Mets. Again, there will be a rough patch in time. There will be an issue. Somebody else will go down. Somebody else is going to have to step up. But I have complete faith in this team. I have complete faith in Carlos Mendoza. And you still got reinforcements with Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas, like I said. Jesse Winker's coming back soon, hopefully. Add him to that depth in the offense category. Everybody's useful. We've seen that before. This team has uses. They're little, mix and match here and there, but everyone has a reason to be here, and that's going to be the problem. It's weird because I think about it, like Tyrone Taylor is not the best center fielder, but he keeps on making defensive plays. And I said this the other day. If they keep on wanting to trade for center fielder, no. Tyrone Taylor is your center fielder. End of story. Defensively, he is very gifted, and he helps. Think about this. If Tyrone Taylor is locking down center field, it's cutting down anything that Juan Soto or Brandon Nimmo or whoever's in left field have to run down. Tyrone Taylor's got that all covered, that whole center field covered. He does a good enough job that Juan Soto, it limits his range. Same thing with Nimmo, limits his range. He doesn't have to do as much. So unless you're getting Jim Edmonds, unless you're getting a Harrison Bader, you don't need a center fielder who's going to come in and shorten up that depth. I want someone who's going to be able to play the entire field and just continue to track down baseballs the way that Tyrone Taylor does it. And until somebody else can do that, then Tyrone Taylor is your center fielder every day. I do not care. Yankees victorious again as well. Paul Goldschmidt, the only RBI of the game. Good pitching performance out of who pitched yesterday? Who did pitch? Now as I'm sitting here blank. Oh, Will Warren. How about that? Will Warren with the return of the century, 5 2/3, 4 strikeouts. Will Warren has had a couple rough outings recently. He actually, the last 3 in particular, rough outings. Two really. The Colorado one, whatever, 4 innings, 2 runs, not terrible. But the Dodgers one was just a blow. That they got shelled. That was the game that they lost 18-2. Judge had the only 2 runs by solo home runs, and then he went to Boston, gave up 4 runs and 5 1/3. But this is a good bounce back. Kansas City again. They're showing why they're not that good of a team, and that division is not that good. I don't care what anybody says. The AL Central, no matter how many wins Detroit Tigers have, the Central's not that great. It's just not. Their pitching on the Royals supposed to be pretty good. Seth Lugo had a good game, but the other guys aren't as dominant against a team like the Yankees. And that's the end of the day, who you have to go through in the playoffs. You got to go through the Yankees. And right now, the Yankees are the kings of the American League. You can't deny that. No matter what anybody says, you cannot deny that the Yankees are the kings of the American League. Right now, the Mets are the kings of the NL, record-wise. But the Dodgers are the kings of the National League. Lastly, I do want to hit on Chris Kreider because it makes me furious. The fact that Chris Kreider, who 13 years here with the Rangers, gets traded to the Anaheim Ducks. And I'm not upset that he technically is gone. Like, there's a lot about this New York Ranger team that's very upsetting. Last year, at one point in time, I think he had like 9 goals and 0 assists. He just was not performing at the level that we expected. He kind of honestly underperformed for most of his career. He had one season where he had 77 points, and we sat there and popped champagne like, oh, this is the next, Wayne Gretzky or Sidney Crosby or Mario Lemieux or whatever, best player in hockey. Chris Kreider was never that it. He had that one season, 52 goals, and you can't knock it, and that was great. Over 13 years, he's sitting in 3rd place overall for goal scorers. But there was still something about him that was never perfect. He was a quiet guy, which that's not the problem. He was a good player, solid player, was up there for a couple decent, deep playoff runs, but he was never that superstar that we needed him to be. That's the problem. We need a superstar. The Rangers need a superstar. Artemi Panarin has been the closest thing to it as far as, point scorer and whatnot, but he's still not a complete player either. And you look at the Panthers, you look at the Oilers, you look at how they stack up. Panthers are an aggressive team, and they have guys that are not just goal scorers, but they're physical. They're aggressive, and they get into it, and they will get under your skin. That's a Sidney Crosby. Now, Sidney Crosby was never as powerful or didn't hit as much as some other players, but he'd get under your skin. He'd just get, he'd get you annoyed in ways where he gets you off your game. And Matthew Tkachuk is like that. That's what Matthew Tkachuk is with the Panthers. He's someone that does it all. He'll get that Gordy hat trick, no problem. He'll score a goal, he'll get an assist, and he'll put 5 up for fighting with no problem. And the Rangers need somebody that could do all the above. And there's no one right now on the team that can do that. And it stinks. And the team's gotten older. Panarin is still at least decent enough that you could live with. But Zibanejad had a really rough season last year. And the way they treated Jacob Trouba in the offseason and got rid of him pretty soon, in the regular season, like you expected that to happen, but it just felt dirty. And the fact that the one person that's coming out unscathed is Chris Drury, who I don't think really knows how to build this team anyway. This team was kind of built before he got there. And yes, they progressed this year. They missed the playoffs completely, but the year before that, they were in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then they just completely fell off. And that's because Chris Drury doesn't know how to build a team. He made a bunch of trades 2 years ago, or to on that playoff push, and all those guys that came in, they did nothing. They weren't effective, and they didn't last long. They disappeared. And then this year, selling off guys. Who did he get? Name me somebody of impact. You trade away Capo Caco, the guy has no problem, going to Anaheim and putting up points. He's got the most points he's had in his career so far. What did Chris Drury do with all those pieces that he traded away? What is he going to do? I mean, dude, we're getting a 3rd-round pick back for Kreider and giving up a 4th pick. I mean, this is not much going on here. There's no expectations with the players that you're bringing in, and free agency. Who are you going to go for? There's not much on the cap that you're able to go and spend big. So this to me is just a wasted season, followed by a rough off season already. That if you're going to blow up the team, blow up the team. But Chris Drury doesn't know how to do it. And on top of that, and I love Igor Shesterkin. I hope he does well. But this is a Carey Price situation when Montreal committed to a ton of money to Carey Price, and then the franchise went downhill. And it feels like Igor Shesterkin is not as good as Henrik Lundqvist, is not as good as some of the other goalies that have put on the blue jersey. And yet, he's our goalie now for the next 8 years. And he's got to start performing like an Hall of Famer, right? Hall of Fame career. That's what Igor Shesterkin needs to now be. He's getting paid the most. He better be the best. And I don't think he is. And you could sit there and say, well, the defense wasn't as good last year, and they allowed a lot of shots on goal. Yeah, but what about the rebounds? There was a lot of rebounds that he gave up. He was not good side to side. You saw a lot of opportunities that he just completely whiffed on. And you could see that offenses were taking advantage of Igor Shesterkin. Is Mike Sullivan going to have a whole different philosophy? Maybe. But are the players going to be any better? Keandre Miller didn't develop. He regressed. There's a lot of young players that regressed on this team. And I talk about Capo Caco, who left, who's had a really good season. How many other guys have been here and stayed here and they stuck with who've done nothing? And that's the problem. So Chris Drury, you got a lot of issues on this team. I don't believe that you can get it right. I really don't. It's funny, whatever's happening in the Garden right now, it's just floating around the NBA team and the NHL team, because I don't believe the Knicks are going to get this right with their coaching situation and their roster next year. I have no idea what their plan is for the roster. I hope it's just keeping the guys that they have and maybe adding some bench. But I don't know. I get the feeling that they really want to make a big splash in the trade market, which means they're going to have to get rid of a lot of those players. And the Rangers, this has kind of been going on for a year now. And Chris Drury just really has completely, dismantled this team and made this New York Ranger team regress. in just a year. After being in the Eastern Conference Finals to missing the playoffs, disgusting. And they had so many opportunities to make the playoffs last year, and they continued to miss. So you got a lot going on. The weekend's here finally. A lot of baseball. Maybe the Knicks will hire a coach. Probably not in that time. But a lot of baseball is going to happen. Looking forward to it. Again, thank you very much for listening to another episode of WFAN Daily. You can always follow me at Hoff WFAN. I'll be back with BT and Sal every day, Monday to Friday. This Friday, obviously, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You'll see me or hear me if you want to. Saturday morning, 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. And then on the Rico Bronya podcast with Devin Roberts. And we're about a week away from the Fanatics Fest. So if you want to check us out, Fanatics Fest, BT and Sal will be there next Friday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then on Saturday, I believe it's the 21st, 22nd, whatever the date is, whatever that Saturday is, Evan and I will be there for the Rico Bronya podcast. I think he said 10:30 a.m. So a lot going on next week at Fanatics Fest. Let's have a blast. It's going to be fun. But till then, I'm going to have a couple days off of this WFAN Daily, but I'll be back Sunday night with more. Thank you for listening to another episode of WFAN Daily. Peace.